So, John,
What should we talk about?
I'm so excited to talk about this with you. So we read Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson for our book club, our Summit Book Club this quarter. And I love Walter Isaacson, and luckily you love Steve Jobs, so you're the perfect person to have with me in this conversation. You knew Steve Jobs.
I did know Steve. Steve and I had a couple of different points in time where we connected. As an executive at Novell, I would call on Apple during his early days and got to know Steve as a visitor to the corporation. When he left Apple and went to Next, I got closer to him because my manager, boss, leader, Ray Norda, wanted to do real tight integration with Next. And so we got to know him that way. And then when he went back to Apple, we got to know him a lot more because we started to have projects together. So I was privileged to watch him from afar. I wasn't as intimate as somebody who would be on his team, but I would be as intimate as you would be just as a business relationship, business dev person would be with the team. So in some ways I was an outsider, but Steve always treated me like an insider.
That's amazing. So what was it like working in proximity with Steve? What was he?
The thing I always
like?
observed about Steve is, first of all, he's incredibly visionary. I think we say he revolutionized 6 or 7 industries. He was demanding. I thought of him as demanding, but he was a gifted storyteller. He could just bring you along. I think most people in the industry knew that if Steve was on stage at an event, he would be the best person on the stage that day because he was just that good.
Wow.
And he did it through stories, and he wowed people through. He was a questioning person if you were in smaller groups, but he was a storyteller on stage.
That's incredible. So he was demanding.
Yes.
I like to talk about, and something that we talked today about in book club is how do we medicine is demanding. It's a demanding field with demanding people. When we're dealing with people's lives and their well-being, it needs to be demanding. So how do we have this demanding approach in medicine while building a team, a good team culture that works and that fits and that pulls the best out of people? You did this for a lot of years.
So demanding is an interesting word. So if I'm on Steve's team and he's got the protagonist, if he's got Microsoft is who we're all competing against, then we know how good they are and we know how good we must be in order to win. And so demanding becomes just the culture you have to win. If I'm in medicine and I'm doing, say, a total knee, Dr. Pitts is doing that, or John is doing a spine surgery, the enemies are bacteria, the enemies are lack of excellence in the street. So if you know who the villains are in the story and you know who the heroes are, then it's demanding can be just what's expected,
right,
and it's a part of your culture. And you don't feel it as a negative because you are you're in a cause, and the cause is to win for this patient. And I think when you're winning things that have value, recognized value in the world, it's not as bad as if you're just winning for selfish purposes or if you're winning just to make me better than you. I think if you're winning for the benefit of an audience you serve, that's a type of demanding everybody can get behind and will feel like is invigorating. So the word demanding turns to invigorating because you feel the cause and the passion about the cause. And I thought that was one of Steve's gifts. He could get you feeling why we're doing what we're doing and what it is that how we're going to help our customers. And you could see that in product design. From the time you opened the box until the time you used the product, it was just elegant, and right, everything had been thought through. And you didn't need a manual because the product was so good by itself. Nobody needed to tell you how to use it because you just knew by just sitting down. And so I felt like that was demanding was a good thing if you had that, if it was the kind of demanding that was invigorating to win and to serve a
common goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And you made a point. I mean, you recently had a total knee done, and your surgeon was demanding.
Yes, and I was glad he was. I mean, he told me that he would check everybody who came into the room. Were they gloved right? Had they washed correctly? Were we going to have no bacteria? Because a total knee is great unless you get it infected.
Right.
If it's infected, it's a revision.
Yeah.
And you don't want that.
Yes.
And so so I was thankful that I had somebody there who was looking after me in a very demanding way.
Yeah. Shout out Dr. Pitts. I love that, and I think it is fun to be surrounded by leaders like yourself, like, Dr. John Edwards at our practice, who do have that inspiring passion, and they are invigorated, and they and you really you demand excellence, but you would never ask me to do something that you wouldn't do yourself,
right.
Willing to do yourself. And I think that's why it's so fun to be led by someone like you, or like Steve Jobs, is he would only ask what he would ask of himself, of his people.
Yes, Steve was driven. And I think of Dr. John Edwards as somebody who knows how to get his team. He can be demanding in a loving way, and he's kind. He doesn't throw chairs. Steve could throw a chair at somebody. I don't like that type of demanding all the time. But John, he doesn't demand that way. But everybody who comes into the room knows that John is dedicated and is passionate about what he does.
Yeah.
And it just rubs off. They feel it by just working with him.
Yeah. Dr. Edwards made a good point that Steve was someone who got curious about things. And when something didn't go right or didn't go his way, maybe he had his own little Steve Jobs about it, but something that Dr. Edwards really does is he asks why. Why didn't that go the right way? Why
don't
get
angry, get curious.
Yeah, don't get angry, get curious, and asking those questions, especially to the team member that maybe made the mistake or is experiencing the mistake or failure. That reflection helps so much more positively for the next outcome. It changes your entire direction.
Does it? When you look at a good sports team, they will have a good culture, and they will have leaders who hold other people accountable, and they're good and gifted, so they're allowed to be excellence and to push people, because you don't get the world-class teams without a lot of attention to detail, right. Without precision, and without demand. And so you have to get on the team, and you have to get ready, because they're going to push you hard. But
right.
If you're pushed in the right way, it's invigorating. You want to do it.
I want to end with a question for you, John. This book really was one of the main takeaways, or one of the main points I think that Walter Isaacson was trying to make, and that Steve really cared about, was leaving a legacy. What does leaving a legacy mean to you?
So one minor way to think about that is when Steve was at Apple in his early days, he developed a certain team and a certain excellence, and it was a winning marketplace. When Steve left Apple, it was at the top of one of the most wealthiest companies in the world by market cap and other things. He then left, and the way he did things, how they did things, persisted over time without Steve. Now, they got Steve back because he was still alive and still going, and they wanted to take it to the next level. But the legacy means that when I'm gone, when I'm not there, things continue because there's enough momentum. Mm-hmm. I also think that it's what you're remembered for, how you remember. How will people think about a leader? What will they think he or she contributed to the culture, to the winning attitude on the team? So I think that legacy is important, and it has power in and of itself.
I love that. That's my favorite point I think that you've made today, is that leaving a legacy, or a good leader, you wouldn't notice that they were gone, right? You gave a beautiful med talk this year at our 2024 summit, about legacy, about how you measured up your life, and you started this practice with John 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
And as you've stepped into hopefully a little bit more of retirement, I don't know if anyone really knows that you're gone yet, because the clinic hasn't skipped a beat. It just keeps going, and it's almost better than it ever has been. And I think that is a legacy in itself, that you were able to create something that remained good and even better in your step away.
What was interesting at that conference is to see people quote Many Minds tagline, or A New Way to Operate, or Life is Back, or all the various ways when we set our culture and vision. They persisted. They first developed within the employees, but then the employees talk to people in the industry. The industry starts feeding it back to you. You know you've come full circle, and that's a persistent capability now that they have of imagining what the practice could be like. So I think that's right.
That's amazing. Well, we're grateful to you, John. So wonderful to have you this morning in our conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.